Hey everyone! So today we're going to be marking up our text and reviewing author's point of view. So remember, your test is on Thursday and Friday, and if we do all three, I know we're going to rock it. So let's go ahead and get started. So when we talk about determining the author's point of view, there are two things we have to keep in mind. We have to think about their purpose, the reason why they're writing, and their point of view, how they feel about it. So what I've done with my text marking is I've circled author's purpose, and I've underlined the definition, and I'll zoom in a little bit. It says, so author's purpose is the main reason he or she creates a piece of writing. And remember, there are reasons why an author writes. It's either to inform, to persuade, to entertain, or to reflect, because sometimes they might write reflective essays about an experience that they've had in their life. And then secondly, we have the author's point of view, what the author thinks, feels, or believes. So again, if they don't have these two things, so when we as readers try to read it, it doesn't quite make sense and it doesn't really have any vision of where it's going. So what we have down here is an excerpt from Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. And civil disobedience might sound a little familiar because this is the foundation of what the civil rights movement was based on. So let's go ahead and read our piece of text. We're going to go ahead and mark it up, and then we're going to look at our graphic organizer. Let's do it. It says, is a democracy the last improvement possible in government? Is it not possible to take a step further towards recognizing and organizing the rights of man? There will never be a really free and enlightened state until the state comes to recognize the individual as a higher and independent power, from which all its own power and authority are derived, and treats him accordingly. Well, that sounds really complicated. I don't know about y'all, but I'm already lost. So let's go ahead and break this down. So, looking at our graphic organizer, we have our topic. The topic is the nature of government. So it's how government acts and how it runs, and how Thoreau felt about it at the time. So in order to find the author's point of view, I have to know my topic. I have to find the text evidence to support it, what the idea that's being expressed, and then ultimately I can come up with my author's point of view. So when I look at my text evidence, the first piece of evidence that supports the nature of government is this quote right here. It says, takes a step further toward recognizing and organizing the rights of man, which I found right here in this first and second line of my excerpt. So that idea that I think is being expressed is that our form of democracy can still be improved. So he felt at the time that democracy wasn't what it was supposed to be, and he wanted it to be better. Next, the next piece of text that I have is never be a really free and enlightened state. So enlightened means one that is wise, one that cares and is just about everyone and everything. So this is in the second and third line of my excerpt. And I think that the idea that's being expressed is that true freedom is impossible under an oppressive government. So when I think about that, I think of someone always telling me what to do, always saying I have to do this, I have to do that, and just constantly being oppressive and forcing me to do something. And at the time, that's what Henry David Thoreau felt about government. So he felt that freedom and true freedom, being able to do whatever you wanted to do, wasn't possible under this type of government. And then lastly, we have recognize the individual as a higher and independent power, which again is that third and fourth line of my text up here. And what I think this means that people should be considered greater than government. So basically what he's saying is that individuals and people should be what is emphasized for the greater good of the world and of the government, and not just the whole government itself and what's best for the people who run it. So overall, the author's point of view is that the individual is more important than the government, and our government must change to reflect that. So that is his point of view. I think the purpose of it would be to inform and to reflect. So that way it's informing us of an issue and it's making us reflect on what the issue is and how that can become, we can become more reflective about it and maybe take a step back and look at it. So if you haven't marked your text yet, Now would be a really good time to hit the pause button and make sure that you've got everything marked. Moving on to our next text. So our next text is called The First Female President. So I didn't know anything about this until I read this text first. This seems pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and take a look. Remember, the first thing we have to do whenever we get a passage is to number our paragraphs. So I found that there are 2 paragraphs. And remember, if we look down at the bottom underneath our text, we have one question to think about. And it says, what text evidence helps you infer? And we talked about inference yesterday. It's that educated guess. So what text helps you infer the author's point of view about Edith Wilson? So that's the question we're going to keep in the back of our mind as we read and mark our first 2 paragraphs. And this type of piece is called an editorial. So basically that just means it's one idea about one person or a given topic. And just like every concept, there are going to be 2 sides, and we'll get to the other side in a minute. So let's go ahead and read this first one. The first female president. History remembers Edith Wilson as far more than just a first lady. In fact, she had been hailed as the first female president of the United States. Though most of her contributions to the presidency took place behind the scenes, they are a testament to this remarkable woman's strength and intelligence. They demonstrate that her unofficial title is well-deserved. Well, that sounds pretty cool. I didn't know any of that. Did you? Let's look at the second paragraph. As a wife to President Woodrow Wilson, Edith bravely assumed nearly all of the president's routine daily activities when her husband suffered a debilitating stroke in October 1919. Rather than allow him to step down, she continued his presidency by acting in his place. She became the sole point, or the only point, of communication between Woodrow and his cabinet. In fact, the American people believed their president only suffered from temporary exhaustion. Edith decided which issues to bring to her ailing husband's attention and which ones she could deal with herself. Edith Wilson met these extraordinary challenges head-on and proved herself an admirable leader. Admirable leader. Let me make sure I get the text correct. So, our topic is pretty simple. Our topic is currently, let me flip my camera around, is Edith Wilson. So, I've already marked my text up here, so that way I kind of figured out what information I wanted to include under my textual evidence. If you need a moment to catch up with your text markings, now is a really good time to hit the pause button and make sure that you've got everything down. So when I look at my textual evidence, the first piece that we have modeled for us is a testament to this remarkable woman's strength and intelligence. Her unofficial title is well-deserved. That's coming from our first paragraph up here. And the idea that's being expressed there is that the way Edith conducted herself was honorable and presidential, which means she made all of the decisions. She made sure that everything ran smoothly so that her husband could still recover and he could still be president. The next piece of text evidence that I have is that she bravely assumed nearly all of the president's routine daily activities when her husband suffered a debilitating stroke. So that's in paragraph 2. And I think that the idea behind this is that Edith helped both her husband and her country. So that way her husband, who had a stroke, was able to recover and she was able to care for him. And she was also able to help run the country. And then lastly, she met these extraordinary challenges head on and proved herself an admirable leader. So I think that this means that Edith was a good leader in a difficult time. So again, she was under a lot of stress, but she was able to lead the country, which I think is pretty awesome. So I concluded that the author's point of view is that Edith Wilson was a remarkable woman and leader. So like I said, this text makes Edith Wilson sound really, really positive. But there are 2 sides to every story. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other text. And that way we can kind of see how tone can change about any given topic. Here we go. So this one's called White House Deception. And deception means to trick or to lie. So let's go ahead and read our text. It says, history may remember Edith Wilson as the United States' first female president. But what it fails to mention is the elaborate deception she orchestrated. When her husband, President Woodrow Wilson, suffered a serious stroke, Edith swooped in to help. She purposefully misled Congress about the seriousness of his condition. Then she had the opportunity to exercise head of state powers, such as signing official orders and writing decrees, in her own hand. History must not look favorably upon this hijacking of the government. To speak with the president's voice is, at best, dishonest. Well, it sounds like this person was not a big fan, especially based on the tone. So again, we can see how tone about the same topic can mean two entirely different things. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that first multiple choice question. And remember, whenever we have multiple choice questions, we always want to mark up our questions so we know exactly what the question is asking us to do. So it says, which sentence best expresses the author's point of view? And I'm going to circle the word best because that part is really important. All of it might be important to the text and can in some way, shape, or form help us, but it's not the best answer. So we're going to look for the best answer. Looking at the multiple choice options, we have Edith Wilson did the right thing in exercising her husband's presidential powers. I don't think that one necessarily answers the question about the author's point of view. So I'm going to mark that one off. That one doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. Looking at B, Edith Wilson is rightly remembered as the first female president of the United States. Again, this sounds a little too positive, and remember, the tone of this one is a little negative. This author did not believe that Edith Wilson was a very positive person. So I can cross off B. Looking at C, it says Edith Wilson deserves to be praised for serving her country. That one doesn't make sense to me either. Again, the tone doesn't match. He was really irritated and felt that she deceived the government. So that means my logical answer is D, that Edith Wilson should not be honored by history for her deception. So now we have to show our thinking. This is, I know it's y'all's favorite part to do, citing our evidence. Yay! So it says, explain what words and phrases you use to infer the author's point of view in the above text. So I'm going to go ahead and have you guys take a look at what I wrote. So looking back at my text, I've underlined and circled some words. So it says the elaborate deception she orchestrated or she planned. She swooped in to help, and help is kind of in quotation marks. That doesn't sound very good. So it has purposefully, so it means she did it with intention. So she purposefully misled Congress. She should not look favorably upon this hijacking, which means she kind of deceived people, made people think that the president was fine when he really wasn't. And then lastly, we have the word dishonest. So down here in my show your thinking, I've written down those 4 pieces of evidence. So again, if you need a moment to press pause, go ahead and make sure that we've got all of our information written down, and then we're going to go ahead and continue. So what we're going to do with our guided practice is you're going to read this story about the American flag heroine. So this is going to be about Betsy Ross, who made the first American flag. But again, before we can read and mark our text, we again have to mark our question so we know exactly what we're looking for, so that way we can find the best answers possible. So looking at the questions, it's on page 123. First question says, which sentence best expresses, so I'm going to circle best expresses, the author's point of view towards the story of Betsy Ross? Question number 2 states, what text evidence, again, there's that word again, or that phrase again, best supports your inference or your assumption about the author's point of view? And then question 3, everyone's favorite question, because it's a constructed response. I love them, you love them, we all love them. Let's go ahead and do it. It says, explain the author's purpose for writing this essay. And I'm going to underline this last sentence. Cite 2 details from the text to support your response. So that means I should see at least 2 pieces of evidence when you can do your constructed response. And as with all constructed responses, we must use race. So I'm going to use race as my checklist when I go to write my constructed response. So you may work with a partner to complete your marking of the text of American heroine. You can also make sure that you've got your text marked. Make sure you have all the information that you need. You may do that with a partner. You may mark the text with a partner. That is totally fine, but the questions you must do by yourself, because I need to make sure that you know, that you're supposed to know everything that you need to know. And then for your independent practice, so this part has to be done alone, unfortunately. Again, this is kind of like your assessment. So you're going to read an excerpt from Frederick Douglass. It is 1 and 2 pages. And then what you're going to do is you're going to complete the multiple choice questions. And again, there is a constructed response, so you know exactly what to do. If you have any questions, just let me know. Have a great day, everybody.